Hello, good morning, everyone. We will get started on today's webinar in just a minute. We'll let everyone filter in through the waiting room and then get started with this month's edition of MDOT in Motion. This is an extended MDOT in Motion featuring the release of the Maryland State Transportation Trails Strategic Plan and a few guest panelists. So we're excited that you've chosen to join us today. This session is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please leave the meeting. The recording will be posted on our website within 2 weeks. We'll share the link to that website at the end. And I'm still seeing people filter in, so I will wait another minute or two. As you're joining us, note that you are muted, but you can ask questions or share comments in the chat, and you can also ask your questions in the Q&A box. We will try to handle clarifying questions after each presentation, but we will have a Q&A session at the end of our presentations today. Seeing this number tick up, again, welcome to today's edition of MDOT in Motion. This is the release of the Maryland State Transportation Trails Strategic Plan and an extended version of our monthly webinar series. Following the presentations, we will answer as many questions as time permits, and we may follow up with you if we're not able to get to your question. Today's webinar is available for 1.5 AICP credits from the American Planning Association. If you are an AICP planner, you can put the code 9315790 into your AICP account to get credit. All right, let's get started. So today's webinar is an edition of MDOT in Motion, our webinar series. We will be releasing the Maryland State Transportation Trails Strategic Plan and hearing from 2 guest panelists. It's important to note that views expressed by guest speakers are those of the speaker and not necessarily those of the Maryland Department of Transportation or the state of Maryland. So you've joined us today for MDOT in Motion. This is our monthly series where we bring educational opportunities to you. We are highlighting multimodal projects across Maryland. These projects help get Marylanders moving, connecting us to each other, to jobs, and to opportunities. What we're hoping to achieve is to take transportation projects and policies that can sometimes be complex and help people understand the impact on the ground. Help people understand the concept of complete streets and a sustainable transportation network. Now, we want to bring this to everyone, so whether you're a transportation a professional, a planner, or just a Maryland resident, we welcome your questions. Again, you can put those in the Q&A box or share any comments in the chat. MDOT in Motion is part of a greater focus here at the Maryland Department of Transportation. At MDOT, we are serious about safety. This is our guiding principle, and we announced this commitment in full in the spring. Our 4 pillars for safety are embedding it into our own initiatives, like transportation trails, advocating for legislation that focuses on safety, and then working with our advocates and the general public to make sure everybody is working towards that goal to improve safety outcomes. What you're going to hear about today, about transportation trails, is an example of something that's in our toolkit, in our toolbox, to provide a safe and separated facility for people walking and biking. It is an engineering safety countermeasure under our complete streets lens that can be used in all sorts of contexts to allow for safe commuting, traveling, or wherever you're going throughout your day. You can learn more about this commitment at our Serious About Safety website. Now, for today, again, the focus is transportation trails, and you'll hear from a couple of different guest speakers. But first, you'll hear about our process for developing our transportation trails strategic plan. We'll hear from Rails to Trails Conservancy about how to build support for transportation trails. You'll hear more from MDOT about our trail ahead and how we hope to implement a state network of transportation trails. And then you'll hear about the impact of trails on the ground from the Great Allegheny Passage out in Western Maryland and the Frostburg State Outdoor Recreation Institute. At the end, following these presentations, we'll have a question and answer period. Our presenters today are Aviva Klue, our Strategic Planning Manager from the MDOT Office of Planning, Greg Lawson, the Mid-Atlantic Director from the Rails to Trails Conservancy, Jeffrey Simcoe is the Executive Director of the Frostburg Outdoor Recreation Economy Institute and a board member for the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy. And then you'll hear more from me at the end. My name is Meg Young. I'm our Deputy Director of Active Transportation and Micromobility here at MDOT. Now, before we jump into these presentations, I'd like to welcome our Deputy Secretary, Joe McAndrew, for planning and project delivery. He has been involved in our planning process for the whole year and been a real champion for transportation trails. So Joe, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Meg. Just confirming, it is Assistant Secretary, and we do have transition at the Maryland Department of Transportation and our leadership. And we have the great support of the previous secretary and the current acting secretary for the work that's being done. I just want to acknowledge today at the outset the tremendous team effort that has gotten underway to deliver the trails plan that will be presented today. The team rolled up their sleeves. We brought on a great consultant team, but I think what was the most telling and most impactful was the sheer amount of interest and commitment from our partners from Mountain Maryland to the Eastern Shore and points in between that came together, hundreds of stakeholders consistently at each one of the meetings to inform and be informed and make sure that we had a process that was inclusive of the interest of each community and making sure that we were building a plan that was ready for implementation. And I think that is exciting. We aren't building from scratch. We've got a trails plan from 2009 that has largely been advanced and a very, very strong foundation with which to build upon. But none of this activity could have been done without the team. And I just want to acknowledge two stakeholders that you see on the screen here, Aviva and Meg, who really quarterbacked the team effort at MDOT, but brought everybody, I truly believe everybody in that was raising their hand and wanted to participate throughout the state. And so, what that tells me is a couple things. One, we've got an ace team at MDOT. I couldn't be happier to be able to work with them. But most importantly, we've got a committed set of stakeholders that are going to help us deliver the plan that's going to be presented. Because we all know good plans are great, but good plans are not good and ultimately important until they're delivered. And I think that's what we as the state of Maryland is after here. An actionable plan, one that can deliver better outcomes, better connectivity, better economic productivity, and better safety outcomes for the state. We are confident we've got the team in place to deliver it, and thanks to the support and leadership from the governor and support from the General Assembly over the last two legislative cycles, we've also got a little bit of funding to be able to make sure that we can go ahead and hit the ground running and get some of these planning efforts put into design engineering and towards construction. So I think the future of trails is bright. We've got an amazing lineup here today to tell a little bit more about what it is we're doing, how we can continue to work together, and then ultimately how we can deliver. But the opportunities before us, and just hats off to the collective team at MDOT, our partners at DNR and other state agencies, but also many, many, many committed stakeholders throughout the state that lent a hand to make sure that this product is as good as it can be. And we're excited to get it into the wild and start implementing it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that welcome, Joe. One correction to one of my earlier statements: the chat function is not available. So in the Q&A, you will see both links that are related to the presentation, and you can put your comments in the Q&A. Now, next we'll hear from Aviva Klug. She's going to kick us off with a little bit about the development of the plan.
Thanks, Meg. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Aviva Klug, and thank you so much for joining us today as we are so excited to announce MDOT's new state transportation trails strategic plan. Ooh, we're going to be saying that a lot. We are so excited it is completed after a year-long effort. Next slide. Before we get started diving into the details of the plan, you will be hearing the word transportation trail so many times throughout this presentation, and we wanted to clarify what types of trails we are referring to. For this plan, a transportation trail refers to a shared use path that is part of a transportation network and is open to the public for bicycle and pedestrian use, including most forms of micromobility from e-scooters to skateboards, and they're often ADA compliant. If you take a look at this photo on the slide, you'll see two examples of transportation trails, including a paved shared use path and a paved side path. Those are shown with the green check mark. The scope of this plan does not include non-transportation or primarily recreational trails, which include unpaved trails such as mountain biking trails or hiking trails, shown by the red X marks. Again, for the purposes of this presentation and for the MDOT slides, any mention of trails refers to transportation trails. When we think about the development of this plan, it started much before the official kickoff last fall. Momentum and interest have been building since the last trails plan was published in 2009. This was a visionary plan setting the framework for how a statewide network for transportation trails can contribute to state goals related to transportation, economic development, public health, and sustainability. Last year, the 2050 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, or the BPMP, was published, and it expanded upon the 2009 plan's vision and developed recommendations based on policies, data analysis, and state goals. Also at the time of the 2050 BPMP, MDOT's new Complete Streets policy was adopted and in the beginning phases of implementation. We pulled out key recommendations from the plans and policies, which included conducting an inventory of existing and planned shared use paths, identifying and prioritizing missing links, and identifying tools and partners to complete shared use path projects, including those identified in rail bank corridors. Together, these serve as the foundation for the final plan. Next slide. Building upon that foundation, we set a new vision for the strategic plan to create a safe and accessible transportation trail network that connects Marylanders to opportunities across their communities, towns, and the state. The vision is supported by 5 main goals: to empower local communities to plan, fund, build, and maintain locally significant transportation trails in partnership with MDOT, to systematically prioritize and build transportation trail projects that will reduce pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities and injuries, to support vibrant communities through transportation trail projects that connect visitors and residents to Maryland's opportunities, to complete a high-quality statewide transportation trail network that connects Maryland's regions, and to coordinate state agencies and resources to leverage tools and funding that advance connectivity and quality of life for all Marylanders. Next slide. The development of the strategic plan was supported by a robust project team from the Maryland Department of Transportation and our state agency partner, the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. We were supported by a consultant team of Tool Design, Cambridge Systematics, and PRR. This initiative was also supported by the Transportation Trails Technical Advisory Committee, which is a focused subcommittee of the Maryland Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. This group of trail stakeholders and subject matter experts had grown from our first meeting of about 25 members to over 75 members to help us with the development of the plan. As you can see on this map, our TAC members cover the entire state and range from local stakeholders to local government partners to state and federal partners. We also have representation from MPOs and national and regional trail partners. Together, we had the expertise in everything from planning to engagement to trail implementation that supported the success of this plan development. We utilize their knowledge and networks to provide data and insight on trails, to review and provide feedback on plan content, and to assist our engagement efforts. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, the plan officially kicked off 1 year ago, and as you can see, our plan development process can be divided into a few key parts. Part 1 focused on the existing conditions analysis, developing our transportation trails database of existing and planned shared use paths, and conducting MDOT policy conversations, doing research on best practices, and creating our MDOT landing page to establish one location for trail resources as we grow our trails portfolio. Part 2 focused on engagement, including a public survey, as well as the first public webinar in April, and listening sessions to help inform the content for 3 trail implementation toolkits. Together, these elements helped inform the final strategic plan and what is included on the interactive website, which serves as a living resource that showcases all of the plan materials, the transportation trails database, and an ever-growing list of resources. As you can see with all the arrows, we had intentionally created a process where the plan was influenced by data, research, tools, and your involvement. We are focused on outcomes and driven by our vision to strategically move towards a safe and accessible transportation trail network, and that's influenced by the inputs of this plan. Over the next few slides, I'm going to dive into a few of the key elements of our process. One of our initial efforts was to develop a database of transportation trails. We collected geospatial information on existing, planned, and potential trails. Existing trails are those that are already constructed or ready to open. Planned trails are trails that are in an adopted plan, in a transportation priority letter, or maybe they have a feasibility study done. They have some documented need or have an established footprint. And potential trails are ones that don't quite have that documented need, but were submitted by our TAC members and vetted through our project team due to their probability to move into a planned phase in the near future. And we're going to keep plugging the website, but this is a really cool resource to look at on the website where you can click all the different layers, and you'll see our new layer for Maryland destination trails. So this is a new designation developed in the plan, and it signifies that this type of trail is notable for its unique features, significant length, noteworthy natural, historic, or cultural features along the route, or connections to areas of importance within Maryland. They are destinations in and of themselves, and we wanted them to receive a higher recognition on this map and in the plan as well. Next slide. Moving into part 2, or the engagement portion of the process slide, we created the Maryland Transportation Trails Survey to get information and feedback from our trails partners and the general public on topics such as trail usage, including how often do you use transportation trails? How do you access the trails that you use? And what challenges or barriers do you experience when using or implementing transportation trails? Next slide. The survey was open for about 6 weeks, and we had 680 responses from all counties and Baltimore cities. We learned so much about Maryland's trail users and non-users. About 86% of the respondents were current trail users, and 13% said that they were not trail users. Of the trail users, 60% use trails once a week or more, and the large majority ride a bike, walk, jog, or run on a trail, and primarily use trails for recreation, followed by using them to access places in the communities. When we asked about how they get to transportation trails, most said that they walked, biked, or drove, and 8% of respondents said that they utilized public transportation. We had a fun mapping exercise where we asked participants their familiarity and support for planned trails in their communities, and although only about 50% knew about some or the majority of planned trails in their areas, both trail users and non-users were overwhelmingly supportive of constructing the planned trails. As we were developing the vision, goals, and recommendations in the plan behind the scenes, We wanted to get the public's input on state priorities. We wanted to know if they would like more trails in more places, building trails in places where there are few or none, upgrading existing trails, or completing longer distance cross-state trails. Many would prioritize building more trails statewide, though non-users slightly preferred prioritizing areas without existing trails. All of this was great feedback and integrated into the final plan. Next slide. And just to be mindful of time, I only summarized a few questions. And again, check out the website. The full report for the survey results are in the appendix of the plan. And it's really interesting to go through and see how people responded. It's broken down by trail user, trail non-user. You can look at some of the demographics of who answered. And if you participated in the survey, thank you. We really appreciate. Oh, the light went off. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you so much for participating in the survey. The results really help shape our recommendations and our trail implementation toolkit topic areas. Next slide. As we gathered our preliminary information for the plan through the existing condition analysis and our stakeholder outreach, we quickly identified that understanding the life cycle of a transportation trail project and where projects encounter significant barriers was an opportunity to support municipalities and other organizations. This graphic identifies the 5 major phases of a trail project life cycle. These are building support, funding, land acquisition, planning and implementation, and operations and maintenance. During each phase, there are unique barriers and opportunities for trail implementation. And long corridor trail projects may follow this life cycle process several times as each segment of the project is completed. Through our research, outreach, and engagement, we determined that the 3 continuous phases of building support, funding, and maintenance were areas where trail implementers could really utilize a consolidated toolkit of resources and best practices as these phases occur throughout the entire life cycle of a trail project. And just as I mentioned earlier, these phases can be engaged multiple times throughout the life of a trail. Within the toolkits, there are valuable resources for trail implementation, including information on common barriers and opportunities for aspiring trail sponsors and local communities newer to trail building. There are helpful tips and tricks, summaries of successful case studies, and dozens of links to useful resources. Each toolkit is tailored to the specific lifecycle phase, and in the Building Support for Trails toolkit, we identify important planning steps, outline potential allies and case studies, and resources that convey the economic benefits of trails. In the Funding Transportation toolkit, we consolidated tips to leverage local, state, and federal funding and technical assistance opportunities to execute trail projects. And finally, in the Maintaining Transportation Trails toolkit, we include strategies, costs, examples from all over Maryland, and best practices for maintenance of transportation trails. Next slide. On the interactive website, you can really dive into the resources, including the toolkits. We have a separate tab for them. This just shows a snapshot of the Building Support for Trails toolkit, and it highlights a case study on Frederick's Carroll Creek Linear Park. On the left, you can click around, you can get general information, explore the 3 case studies. Each toolkit has 3 case studies, and access a list of resources. In the text box, you can scroll for more information and access links. You can zoom in and out, and you can even change the base layer of the map. This is a really cool resource. Again, we encourage you to look at it. If you have any other case studies, please let us know. But now, to hear about a building support best practice, I'm going to turn it over to Meg to introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aviva. I think it's great to know the background and everything that went into the development of this plan. So next up, to hear more about building support, we're going to hear from somebody who knows a lot about it. Greg Lawson serves as the Mid-Atlantic Director for Rails to Trails, bringing over 15 years of experience in both the nonprofit and government sectors. His work has been instrumental in advancing sustainable community development with a strong focus on connecting cities to their communities. Greg has successfully implemented strategies that prioritize the needs of marginalized populations, securing over $200 million in investment for underserved neighborhoods. This achievement underscores his ability to transform vision into actionable results. Residing in Baltimore, Maryland, Greg is a dedicated advocate for equitable and sustainable development. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Xavier University in Louisiana, as well as a Master's of Public Administration. In addition to his professional commitments, Greg actively contributes to several nonprofit boards. In his personal time, he enjoys practicing hot yoga, attending outdoor music festivals, and exploring nature with his children and dog. Greg, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Meg. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Greg Lawson, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Mid-Atlantic Director here at Ralston Charles Conservancy. I've been in this role for the last 5 months, and I've been fortunate enough in this last 5 months to work with multi-sector partners across the state of Maryland in child development, and I'm incredibly excited to be here this morning. This morning, my goal is simple, to give you a quick overview of who Ralston Charles Conservancy is, how we work collaboratively across the nation, and particularly here in Baltimore, and highlight some of the incredible work we're doing through our coalition. Next slide. So who's Ralston Trails Conservancy? We're the nation's largest trail walking and biking advocacy organization. At Ralston Trails Conservancy, or RTC, we like to call it here, our mission is simple, yet bold, to build a nation connected by trails. We envision reimagining public spaces to create safe ways for everyone to walk, bike, and of course, be active outdoors. Throughout today's presentation, I'll highlight how we achieve our mission through a multifaceted approach. This includes advocacy strategies, providing technical assistance, resource mobilization, and more importantly, building public awareness around our trail network. Next slide. One of our most ambitious and inspiring projects at RTC is the Great American Rail Trail, 3,700 miles of multi-use trails stretching across the entire country. This isn't just any trail, it's a monumental undertaking to connect the entire country coast by coast. So imagine being able to walk a bike from Washington State all the way to Washington, D.C. Good luck with that and send us a lot of pictures. This incredible vision is becoming a reality. It's 55% complete, and I'm proud to say that Maryland plays a key role. The Great American Rail Trail includes segments right here in our state, like the Capitol Crescent Trail and the CNO Canal, which are critical links in this network, providing over 200 miles of completed trails in our cross-country network. These trails don't just offer recreation opportunities, they connect community, preserve spaces, and provide sustainable transportation alternatives. So how do we tackle such large-scale transformative projects? We do it through something called Trail Nation, our initiative. You can find a wealth of information on our website. I'll drop in the chat shortly. Wealth of information on our website. But at its heart, Trail Nation is about building interconnected trail networks that serve as the backbone of healthy, vibrant communities. We work with a diverse group of stakeholders across the country through 9 Trail Nation projects that connect across cities, counties, and multiple state lines. These networks are learning labs to test strategies and approaches in communities that are diverse in culture, constituency, and policies. Through Trail Nation, RTC is working to connect nearly 12,000 miles of trails in partnership with over 300 trail advocacy organizations, and state and local leaders. I want to give a shout out while I'm on this slide to my colleague Kate Foster, who supports our work in the greater Philadelphia area with the Circuit Trails. This is a testament of a vast network aiming for over 800 miles of interconnected trails, transforming how people move and connect in the region. You'll hear most of the presentation about the work we're doing here in Baltimore. And next slide. Ralston Trails Conservancy has a long and proud history of impact right here in Maryland. Since 2017, RTC has been actively leading network implementation across the state. As you can see, we provide a suite of tools and resources, including advocacy support, strategic planning, technical assistance, more importantly, fund development strategies, assisting city and local government with grant application and also taking fundraising efforts on our own. Next slide. Our impact goes even deeper. We've been founding members of critical coalitions that drive this work forward. For instance, we've been instrumental in partnership with the Washington Area Bike Association and local and national partners in establishing the Capitol Trails Coalition, which is building a world-class trail network throughout the greater Washington, D.C., Prince George's, and Montgomery counties. Through this coalition, we've supported the implementation of over 450 miles of trail development in Prince George's and Montgomery counties alone. This is a monumental achievement that has truly transformed mobility, recreation, and provided sustainable transportation alternatives. This work is not just about building miles of trails, it's about the resources to make it happen. We've actively fundraised tens of millions of dollars for these projects, bringing vital investment to our communities. Recently, we've helped secure federal funding such as the multi-million-dollar RAISE grant to support trail infrastructure and filling in critical gaps within the state. Our technical expertise is also a cornerstone of our work. We provide critical support to ensuring priority projects are designed and built at the highest standards while still centering residents' needs and aspiration, working closely alongside local and state partners. From here on out, I like to focus our work on what ROTC is doing right here in Baltimore, an exciting, impactful story of collaboration to build a connected city through trails. The Baltimore Green Network is a prime example of how our nation's mission translates into tangible local impact, creating a healthy, more connected city for all. Next slide. The Baltimore Greenway Network Trails, the Baltimore Greenway Trail Network is a truly a game-changer initiative for the city. When completed, this ambitious initiative that originally began as a 48-mile inner-city loop and has now grown into a vision of 70+ miles of connected trails. This opportunity is immense. It's not just about recreation, it's about connecting more than 75 neighborhoods to each other into vital destination. Imagine being able to walk or bike safely to work centers like universities or hospitals or cultural amenities like the Baltimore Museum of Arts, or to even transportation hubs such as Penn Station, or even being able to walk or bike to nearby counties. It's about creating pathways for health, economic opportunity, and community cohesion. Next slide. Sorry, my light went out too. Thanks. Our network represents a shared vision for a truly connected Baltimore. It's more about just building asphalts and green spaces. It's about unlocking the city of Baltimore's truest potential. A few key elements to highlight in this opportunity is our resource mobilization, our multi-sector collaboration, and of course, our deep community engagement led by my colleague Quentin Batts, who's also on the call. The Baltimore Greenway Network is a testament to the power of reimagining public spaces for the benefit of all. This isn't about building trails, it's about building a better Baltimore, one connected neighborhood at a time. Next slide. A project of this scale simply cannot happen without deep collaboration. Shout out to all the city agencies and state partners who make this work possible. This is where the Baltimore Greenway Trail Coalition comes in. A powerful allegiance of over 60 organizations, including nonprofits, businesses, city agencies, and individual stakeholders that work to advance our trail network. Shout out to all of our coalition members who are in attendance this afternoon. Thank you for your time and energy as in moving this work. As I stated earlier, our work with the coalition truly begins within community. We establish neighborhood action teams. These groups of residents who live along existing and proposed trail corridors advocate for their particular segments and serve as vital liaisons within the communities for planning, design, and most importantly, programming of trails. This ensures that the network is truly community powered. And because of that these deep engagement and collaboration efforts, we've worked hand in hand with these stakeholders to identify and prioritize 5 key projects that are critical to advancing the network. And through these collaborative efforts, ROTC, in partnership with city agencies such as planning, transportation, and the Mayor's Office of Infrastructure, along with our coalition members, has successfully raised over $11 million to date to support the advancement of the Greenway Trails Network. This is a true testament to what we can achieve together. One of the fantastic examples of our deep community engagement and our trail activation is our Year of Movement series. This initiative activates existing trails and feature ongoing bike rides and walks led by different community partners and our coalition members. On this slide, you'll see a wonderful example of a recent bike ride led by Black People Ride Bikes. These initiatives are not just about cycling, they're about exploring segments of the Greenway, fostering community, and building awareness and excitement for our overall network. Next slide. Within the larger Baltimore Greenway Trails Network, through our deep engagement efforts, our coalition has identified these 5 key projects. The East Side Connector, often known as Norfolk Southern Trail, is currently in conceptual design, but I'm proud and happy to say that the city has funding for full acquisition and working hand in hand with us, working hand in hand with Norfolk Southern for the purchase. This trail runs north from Canton at Boston and Haven Streets through Highlandtown and Greektown, and connect through a proposed BGE utility corridor to the lower end of Heron Run in Northeast Baltimore. We have other projects that are moving through various phases of design, such as the Druid Hill Park to Lake Montebello, or what we now call as 33rd Street, which currently has completed 30% design, and I'm proud to say is moving to full design and has funding for full design. Next slide. Other projects include the Middle Branch Shoreline Trail, currently in conceptual design, and as well as the Jones Fall Gateway project. We're working with a major partners, including the Friends of Jones Fall and Midtown Partners, to activate the space. And lastly, one of my favorite projects that I'm excited to talk a little bit deeper about is the Chinkapin Run Trail. Next slide. This project is a critical project and will connect the northern end of Chinkapin Run to the Morgan State campus and to the popular Lake Montebello and further into the Heron Park Run. Through our work is deeply rooted in community, and we're partnered with community-based agencies like Rebuild, a local nonprofit here in Baltimore working on community revitalization strategies. As we work to advance the Greenway Network, residents in Northeast Baltimore identified a vital need for a trail within Chinkapin Run Park. So much so, when my colleagues Kate and Quentin conducted a visionary trail walk with our funders, residents pointed out a makeshift path that they created to get to amenities such as the nearby grocery store. A huge shout out to my colleagues, as well as city agencies who are working to establish what we now have as a neighborhood action team. Since then, the neighborhood action team, along with city agencies such as City of Baltimore, Rec and Park, as well as transportation, begun our planning efforts. To date, shout out to Katie and Quentin again, to date we provided numerous hours of technical assistance and supported over $270,000 in fundraising efforts from foundations such as France Merit and many individual donors to kick off the 30% design. I also want to take a minute to highlight and thanks to the City Office of Transportation. This is the first time in our history at RTC we have executed MOU with our city to serve as the lead partner in this planning and design effort. Since then, we've hosted a community celebration to celebrate this monumental achievement. The collaborative has worked together to select 2 design firms as our design consultant, and I am excited to say on next Tuesday, we're kicking off a full design process in partnership with our neighborhood action team, the City of Baltimore, and the residents in Northeast Baltimore. RTC will continue to collaborate with our action team, state and local leaders, along with our community partners to realize this project. This connection is not just about recreation, it's really about providing safe and active transportation options for residents, linking educational institutions and open green space to our other trail network. Next slide. So how can you help us continue with this work? We invite you to join in making the Baltimore Trails Network a reality. supporting our broader work in Maryland. So here are a few ways to engage. Help us advocate. Talk with your elected officials around the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network and ask them to support it with funding as well as champion it as a worthy cause here in Baltimore. Join the coalition. We are looking for helpful hands to help us. The coalition meets quarterly. Our next meeting is next week, September 9th from 5 to 7 at Mobtown Brewery. It's a great way to connect and get involved and collaborate with others to start an action team in your neighborhood. And lastly, meet us on the trail. Meet us on the trail. Join us at one of our Year of Movement events. Check out our Facebook page for upcoming bike rides and walks. Or you can just join us next Saturday at Walk with a Doc at Lake Montebello at 9 o'clock. It's a fun way to experience the trails and connect with the community. Next slide. Thank you for your time and attention today, and I hope this presentation has given you a clear picture of the incredible work happening to connect Baltimore through trails. Please feel free to connect with me. My contact information is here on the slide, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at Q&A time. Thanks.
We definitely have a couple questions for you. We'll answer at the end. The only, I think, quick clarifying question was just if your neighborhood, where did that go? If there's a stipend for those neighborhood stakeholders who participate.
At this time, there isn't a stipend, but I love the idea of inclusion with that question. But at this time, we don't offer stipends, but I love the idea.
Yeah.
And just
All right.
one more quick on that, just because it's in the same thought. How do you recruit the neighborhood action team and how do they operate?
And so we recruit neighborhood action team through our deep engagement. So Quentin, shout out to Quentin Bass is on the call. We do deep engagement. So we attend a lot of neighborhood association meetings, a lot of community events to build awareness about the overall network. And so we talk with residents to kind of source out trail champions. And so we initiate from that way. And so we start with 1 or 2 residents and then kind of recruit along the way of folk interested in active transportation and of course, trail development. And I think the second part of your question was,
How do they operate?
so they meet monthly around their segment of trails. So whether it's coming up with advocacy strategies or we work with them around technical expertise of how do we envision a trail. An example is we're working with Chinkapin, who provided expertise around how do you get to a trail from vision to reality. And then we also support them in fund development. And so they meet monthly to develop their strategies. We have quarterly coalition meetings to support with an overall strategy. And then RTC provides technical expertise to making that vision a reality.
Thank you so much, Greg. And we will return to the rest of the questions at the end of our presentations.
Meg, you're on mute.
Wow. All right. Well, what I said was, thank you, Greg, for walking us through how Rails to Trails Conservancy works on building support for transportation trails projects and bringing it to life with those great projects in Maryland, the Baltimore Greenway Trail Coalition and the Capitol Trails Coalition. Now, to bring us back to the Maryland State Transportation Trails Strategic Plan. Again, my name is Meg Young, and I'm our Deputy Director for Active Transportation and Micromobility here at MDOT. So, our Transportation Trails Strategic Plan, again, I'll bring us back to this several times, is really broken into a trail project lifecycle analysis. As Aviva explained, we identified opportunities and barriers during each of these phases, and it really helped us lay out a strategic vision for our plan. The main purpose of this being strategic and identifying those opportunities and barriers is to take this database of trails that we've built and hopefully have it progress to show progress as trails moved from being potential to planned to existing. On the interactive website, you can explore the live database, and we've had a couple questions about if we're still collecting data. This is a live database. So at MDOT, we are working this into our work plan to consistently check with local jurisdictions about what is in their plans and what they're hearing in their communities. This is the live version. If you navigate to the progress and trails ahead, there's also a benchmark version. So that is at the time of publication today, what the state of transportation trails is in Maryland. You can download that geodatabase on the website and explore our existing conditions. Right now, there's 1,400 miles of existing trails in Maryland. There are 2.1 million people, or 34% of Marylanders, that live within a half a mile of these trails. Now, if the planned trails were built, we would add an additional 366 miles, and there would be an additional almost a little bit over 500,000 Marylanders that would then be within half a mile of a trail. So that is what we want to see. We want to see more Marylanders who can access a trail easily from their community. So you'll have to check back on the website as we document our progress and show how far we can go since our benchmark of this plan. To help projects move from planned to existing, the plan also goes into the state and local roles throughout the project lifecycle. This is table 3 from the PDF, but it goes through each project lifecycle phase and what role the state plays, as well as what role that local jurisdictions, counties, and towns play in each phase. Again, for those places where our local partners are playing a big role in building support, funding, and operations and maintenance, we've developed toolkits that have interactive resources on the website, case studies, and tools. We heard from Greg about building support, and on the building support toolkit, you can also go to the resources page and link to a lot of Rails to Trails Conservancy resources for things like dealing with opposition or how to build a coalition. Next, I'll take us through a little bit about funding, and then after me, we'll hear from Jeffrey Simcoe about operations and maintenance. So for funding and advancing projects from plans to being existing implemented trails, the plan details recommended criteria for selecting local projects. This was developed over the course of the year based on all of the inputs that Aviva walked us through, from building this database, looking at survey responses, doing an assessment of project feasibility and readiness, looking at funding metrics, and our state priorities and goals. All of these have to work together to find a project that can be funded and implemented. So in the plan, you can dive into these criteria that we recommend local jurisdictions use when they're working on their local plans. First and foremost, we recommend improving safety for all roadway users. And for this, MDOT has our vulnerable roadway user assessment that was recently completed, or our outreach was recently completed and will be released by the end of the year. The vulnerable roadway user assessment includes inputs such as crash data, community factors, and local public surveys to identify high-risk areas for people walking, biking, and rolling. We also recommend looking at access to opportunity. So high population and low connectivity census blocks, areas that have achieved a sustainable communities designation, the state's priority funding areas, and Governor Moore's enough communities that look to connect youth and underserved communities to opportunities. We also recommend that trails provide access to parks. Trails can connect to our roadways, and they can also connect to opportunities for recreation on our state parks, local public lands, and parks. The next criteria is access to transit. So providing proximity to rail transit or major transit hubs. Gap filling projects. These are projects that extend existing shared use paths or trails. And lastly, trails that connect activity centers and destinations. So places such as Maryland main streets, schools, bicycle and pedestrian priority areas. Now, to navigate these selection criteria on the interactive website, we have a project selection criteria map. On the map, you can customize your view by turning on and off different layers. You can type in an address for a potential project and see how it qualifies. And again, this is going to be a living website and a living map. So when our funding criteria are announced next year for our next grant funding cycle for our grant programs, such as the Kim Lamphere's Bikeways Network Program, or the State Highway Administered Transportation Alternatives Program, we plan to update this map so you can see which criteria apply to which funding sources. So when that is determined for the next round of grant funding, you will see updates to this map to, again, help locals select which project to put forth for funding and potential grant funding. To zoom in a little bit on the map, you can overlay all of these different layers. This is a zoom in of Westminster, and what you can see here in the blue outline is the Westminster Main Street. And then the buffer here, along here, is a vulnerable roadway user high-risk area. So should Westminster look to select a project, it looks like there needs to be some way to access this main street and not be in the high-risk area. So that would be a great potential project. You can explore funding case studies and ways to put together different sources of funding on the website. Again, you can explore each case study, you can explore it on the map, and read a little bit about how trails were developed here in Maryland. In addition to locally selected projects, the plan goes into our statewide or regionally significant project selection. Now, these are projects where the Maryland Department of Transportation would likely be involved in advancing a trail project. Criteria for where we would track a project include projects that are cross-jurisdictional in Maryland, if they cross county or jurisdictional lines. Trails that overcome large barriers. These might include something like a river, an active rail line, or an interstate highway. Large barriers often require large investments to overcome the physical barriers. Of course, we'll track projects in the MDOT right-of-way. Anything that is owned by the Maryland Department of Transportation or Modal Administration is something where the MDOT would likely be a project sponsor. And then, last but not least, this trail announces a new designation that will be further developed over the implementation of this plan for Maryland destination trails. This designation would refer to trails that are popular destinations in and by themselves. These are cross-state or interstate trails. They are scenic trails with noteworthy natural, historical, or cultural features, and they're longer distance, 10 miles or longer. And the role for MDOT with a Maryland destination trail is that these would already be built, but according to our project life cycle analysis, operations and maintenance needs to be a continued focus. So just because it's built doesn't mean that we should forget about it or fail to maintain it. For it to be a destination, we need to keep an eye on maintenance and amenities. So in the plan and on the website, you can explore the first 14 projects that we identified to track. Each of these projects, if you navigate through the website, you can see where they currently are and what the next phase would be. An example that we already had a question about was the Torrey C. Brown to Jones Falls connection. Torrey C. Brown, or commonly known as the NCR, is a rail trail that is predominantly in Baltimore County and extends all the way to Pennsylvania. And the Jones Falls Trail travels through north-south in Baltimore City. To connect these two popular and well-used trails, there has been a feasibility study and several alignments have been proposed. So the next step is to identify the preferred alignment between the two. You'll also see on here, again, some trails that have already been constructed and are well used, such as the Western Maryland Rail Trail, the C&O Canal Path, and the BWI Hiker-Biker Trail. For these to be tracked projects, again, the project lifecycle phase that they're in deals with operations and maintenance. So when we think about the BWI Hiker-Biker Trail, MDOT and our Maryland Aviation Administration that actually operates the trail around BWI Airport is currently working on repairing the bridges around the trail loop. Going back to the trail project lifecycle analysis, we spoke about project selection, but this plan also details policy recommendations for Maryland agencies. These span all of the project lifecycle phases. Got a sampling of some of the policy recommendations that came out of this plan. They're categorized by the lifecycle phase, the identified need that we identified over the past 12 months, the recommendation, our timeframe for implementation, and the responsibility. So some examples of the recommendations that you see on your screen is during the building support phase, we identified the need to have stronger coordination across state agencies. There have been several questions about how the Maryland Department of Transportation and the Department of Natural Resources work together. And we work together really well for the development of this plan through our Technical Advisory Committee. So the recommendation here is that we make that Technical Advisory Committee a permanent subcommittee of the Maryland Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. The MBPAC committee has quarterly meetings and has agency representation, not only from MDOT and the Department of Natural Resources, but also the Department of Commerce, the Department of Planning, and many other state agencies. In the project lifecycle phase of funding, we want to continue to help local jurisdictions navigate funding sources for transportation trails. So part of our work at MDOT is to align project selection criteria to be consistent along all of our funding sources. And once we get into the next fiscal year of funding sources, we'll update those criteria on our interactive webpage. For land acquisition, we want to formalize rail banking processes and policies at MDOT. We recently rail banked a new corridor in Dorchester County outside of Cambridge. And in the long term, we want to explore legislative proposals to codify rail banking and trail sponsorship by state agencies. This is something that MDOT will partner with not only the Department of Natural Resources, but we'll be working with legislative partners in the General Assembly. When we get into planning, we want to have a robust pipeline of locally led projects that are eligible for larger funding opportunities. And for this, our role at MDOT that we've identified is to provide more technical assistance using our on-call consultants for multimodal programs. So things like the Kin-Lamphere Bikeways Networks projects. When an applicant comes to Bikeways, thinking about how we could use our consultants to help a project get completed faster and to a high standard. For implementation, transportation trails are an essential part of our Complete Streets policy implementation. One of the things that our Complete Streets implementation plan calls out is updating our multimodal data layers. Right now, we have highway traffic counts, and we are looking to expand that to also include bike and pedestrian counts that can then be used in our modeling systems and help support the right type of bicycle facility selection. And then last but not least, when we get into operations and maintenance, currently in the state code, shared use paths and sidewalks, even on state highways, become the responsibility of local jurisdictions to maintain. But we want to make sure we have mechanisms to support maintenance at the local level. So we're investigating long-term solutions, working with the U.S. Department of Transportation on a peer exchange, as well as working with our statewide maintenance council focus group and looking at cost analysis for maintenance of active transportation facilities. This is a small sampling of the recommendations. If you go to our interactive webpage, you can actually filter through the recommendations. You can explore them by the project lifecycle phase, by the timeline, or the responsible agency. And again, this is a living website, so in the coming year, we'll also add a tracking tab. Again, we encourage you to explore these websites on your own time. We have both our mdot.maryland.gov/trails plan website, and this has our definitions of transportation trails, the downloads and explanations of the plans, and the link to the interactive website. This quick short link of mdot.maryland.gov/trails plan will then help you get to the interactive webpage. The interactive webpage has our downloadable versions. It has all of the interactive maps, the toolkits, and our tracked transportation trail projects in one place. Now, the last toolkit, which I did not dive into, is about exploring maintenance case studies. For this, we have 3 case studies for Prince George's County, the Patapsco Regional Greenway, and the Great Allegheny Passage. Now, the Great Allegheny Passage is something that we have already designated as a destination trail. And to hear about both the maintenance and the economic impact of this destination trail, we're going to hear from Jeffrey Simcoe. So I'll pass it over to him. Jeffrey Simcoe serves as the executive director of the Frostburg Outdoor Recreation Economy Institute, where he implements workforce development programs with regional partners, communicates the economic contributions of outdoor recreation, advocates for sustainable recreation infrastructure, and supports initiatives for outdoor businesses and entrepreneurs. He also lends his expertise to several boards and committees, including serving as a board member of the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy. Jeff relocated to Appalachia more than 30 years ago to pursue his passion for outdoor recreation and adventure. He holds a BS and MS in Environmental and Natural Resources Economics from West Virginia University, and his career, spanning both public and private sectors, has consistently focused on natural resource management and outdoor recreation. He joined Frostburg State University in September of 2024. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Meg. Thank you for that introduction, and congratulations on the release of this plan. It's been a pleasure to serve on the Technical Advisory Committee. I'm coming to you live from the campus of Frostburg State University in Appalachia, Maryland. Our executive director for the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy was really wanting to deliver this information today, but it happens to be in Europe on vacation, so I'm proudly standing in for him. Just a little bit about the Frostburg Outdoor Recreation Economy Institute. We're focused on the regional outdoor economy. We offer education, research, and training programs to workers, business owners, and policymakers. And the Institute is an initiative within the Frostburg State University Division of Advancement and Regional Engagement. So today I'd like to talk to you about the economic impacts along the Great Allegheny Passage. Next slide, please. So what is the Great Allegheny Passage, or the GAP? The GAP is a 150-mile biking and hiking path that begins in Cumberland, Maryland, and ends in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, connecting 12 trail towns along the way. The GAP was built over a 35-year period, leveraging $80 million in private and public funds. And the GAP is not owned by the GAP Conservancy. The GAP Trail is owned by 7 different segment owners. And those owners maintain their sections of the GAP with assistance from numerous volunteer organizations. In 2024, the GAP welcomed almost 1 million visitors. All 50 states were represented. as well as dozens of countries. Outside of Pittsburgh, Cumberland, Maryland is routinely the second or third busiest hub along the Gap, in part because the C&O Canal towpath terminates there, and also Amtrak train service is available to both Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. out of Cumberland, making return travel via train possible. So what role does the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy play, or we've referred to it as GAP-C? The GAP Conservancy leads national marketing and promotional efforts in conjunction with numerous local and regional destination marketing organizations, or DMOs. The GAP Conservancy curates the GAP's official trail map and produces the trail guide, which is the official guide to traveling the C&O Canal towpath and Great Allegheny Passage, and also maintains the website at gaptrail.org. Some additional efforts, the GAP Conservancy coordinates trail count days and analyzes trail use patterns, works with trail towns to update signage, works with trail-facing businesses, and oversees research that documents the impact of the GAP use on the regional economy. And then lastly, the GAP Conservancy raises funds for trail maintenance and awards emergency and enhancement grants along the Gap out of a small endowment fund that's held by the Community Foundation of the Alleghenies. Next slide, please. So what is the economic impact of the Gap? The Gap generates approximately $120 million in economic impact each year, mostly in direct spending by Gap users in trail-facing small businesses. That's almost $800,000 per mile per year of economic impact. We found that overnight travelers spend almost $500 a day during their trips. And Allegheny County, Maryland, where I'm sitting today, captures 25% of the entire GAP's economic impact, or approximately $31 million per year, while representing just 14% of the GAP's total length. You may ask, why is that? But the reason is that Allegheny County, Maryland's two largest communities, Frostburg, Maryland, and Cumberland, are right on the Gap, and both offer a full range of overnight amenities, small retail businesses, outfitters, and signature events. Another reason is that Allegheny Tourism, directed by Ashley Workman and her team, does an incredible job of amplifying the region as a destination for outdoor recreation, and where mountain culture is authentic and thriving. And their tagline is that we are the mountainside of Maryland. Next slide, please. So how does the GAP Trail support business development and job creation? A strong business community exists within the GAP impact zone. Residents, trail users, tourists support businesses through purchasing goods and services. Some businesses benefit modestly, while other businesses rely on trail users as their main source of income. A report published in 2021 by Fourth Economy showed that 44% of businesses surveyed were found primarily to serve GAP users. Most GAP businesses are small to mid-sized, with a median staff of 4 employees and a median revenue of approximately $100,000 annually. One other fact in the report is that if the GAP were a small business, it would be one of the largest employers in the region. So what other additional economic benefits does the GAP generate? So on top of that, direct, indirect, and induced economic benefits that we just talked about, there's some additional benefits. Research shows that the gap generates an additional $19 million in tax revenue, with almost half of that tax revenue benefiting state, county, and local governments. And that's valuable revenue, especially with budgets shrinking in most all local governments. So additionally, and this information was teased out of a user survey, that travelers indicate that they spend an additional $22.8 million on gear and goods, primarily used on the Gap, but purchased elsewhere. While those purchases don't represent local impacts, the purchases positively impact the broader outdoor economy tied to the existence of the Gap. Next slide, please. So we've discussed the important economic impacts that the Gap contributes to local economies. So let's talk a little bit about trail maintenance, planning, and importance of maintaining trail continuity and a quality trail product. As mentioned before, the 7 trail owners have primary responsibility over trail maintenance. And so this approach would be best characterized as a decentralized maintenance approach, where each owner is leveraging their own resources, equipment, staff, and volunteers to maintain their section of trail, with some type of line item in their budgets to put towards trail maintenance on the Gap. Recently, let's say over the last 9 months, the Gap Conservancy has engaged engineers and planners to evaluate every section of the Gap, with particular focus on major infrastructure such as bridges, tunnels, fencing, drainage systems such as pipes, culverts, ditches, the trail surface itself, and they've documented any geotechnical concerns along the 150-mile Gap. This effort also includes developing a mobile app and an online dashboard that will help owners make more informed decisions about how to use their resources most efficiently. And this type of information is also helpful for fundraising, budgeting, and it demonstrates the need for a more proactive, long-term critical infrastructure investment. So some of the things that were discovered during the mapping process. So now the Gap Conservancy now knows that out of over 1,000 drainage pipes along the Gap corridor, almost 400 of them are rated in poor condition and need of a repair or replacement. We also now know where they are located, and once repaired, the database can be updated to reflect the work. Similarly, we now know that there are around 120 miles of drainage swales along the Gap that can convey storm water away from the trail. And we've discovered that 26 miles of those need to be refurbished or repaired. With any trail, you're definitely going to be battling water the whole time with a trail, and that's a main focus area on the maintenance. Some other sort of maintenance concerns that were discovered include, and these challenges really are associated with severe storms, water and drainage, and freeze-thaw cycles, combined with steep slopes adjacent to the Gap. These present challenges, and a couple of the more recent issues that have been discovered and addressed include, in early April of this year, a section of the Gap in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, was closed for 2 weeks while professional crews performed preventative rock scaling efforts to remove as many loose boulders as possible above the gap. At that point of time in the year, there's relatively there's less use than the prime summer season, and so that was a opportune time to close the trail for that time period to address that particular issue. In April, in May, we had some heavy flash flooding here in Allegheny County, Maryland, and also in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. Those storm events clogged culverts, washing away a portion of the trail surface and downed hundreds of trees along the trail. In that instance, our trail owners, with the help of volunteers, were able to address those issues relatively quickly, and the trail saw little interruption from what was a devastating flood event for the region here. Another example is in June, an active landslide was discovered in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. That one will require complicated excavation by professionals. As a result, at this time, there's a 6-mile section of trail that is currently closed for public safety reasons. But in coordination with the county, the Gap Conservancy is currently underwriting shuttle vehicle service for travelers to keep the continuity of the trail and keep those travelers moving towards their destination, as Somerset County works with adjacent landowners and firms to further assess that landslide situation and come up with a plan to address that. And at that point in time, that section of the trail will be reopened. In Allegheny County, Maryland, just want to point out that trails are sort of living, breathing resources, and some of them have some complicated characteristics. That section from Cumberland up to the Mason-Dixon line contains 2 major tunnels, several railroad crossings, and also has an average grade of 2% from Cumberland to the Mason-Dixon line. But the county here in Allegheny County, Maryland, recognizes the benefits associated with the gap and has invested in its upkeep and maintenance. So it's, in my mind, important to recognize the efforts of county leadership, staff, and volunteers. I'd like to shout out our local volunteer organization, Mountain Maryland Trails, in undertaking this work each year to keep the gap safe and open, and to keep these economic benefits flowing to this rural region.
Sorry, I have no idea what happened there. It just turned off, but we're back now. I don't know if
Okay.
it kicked everybody out.
No, they're coming back in.
There.
I'll have to talk with Jessica, but I have no idea. It just stopped.
Apologies, everyone. We are rejoining the webinar.
And thanks for joining back in.
Yes. I think we are about at our Q&A section. We have about 10 minutes for those who have
Unfortunately, we
rejoined us.
lost them, but I was able to remember some of them if we wanted to get going that way. If you have a dire question, please resubmit it. It's okay if you don't remember. Feel free to put it in the chat. We'll answer them away. But Jeff, there were a lot of questions about your assessment. Was it volunteer-based? How did you build your dashboard? I think that's a great place to start.
Sorry about the allergies. I must have caught some dust here, but the assessment was done by professional engineers from a firm out of Pittsburgh. So I would imagine that that information will be released as far as how the assessments were done, the criteria. But there are a lot of old railroad bridges on the Great Allegheny Passage. that require, inspections. And if you're going to have to replace an old railroad bridge, that's a project that's going to take a long time. So understanding what condition the bridges are to prioritize projects was one of the goals of this particular project. That's one where you could contact Brian Perry, the executive director of the GAP. I would think the plan there'll be some public portions of the plans and then some internal documentation. But if you want to follow up with Brian, I would suggest that. And then just as far as any of the other resources under the About Us section on the GAP's website, there's the research and resources tab where I would imagine you could find some other information about prior trail studies or trail counts and economic impact studies.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
If we go back up to building support with Greg, there were a lot of great questions about how to rely on Rails to Trails for different resources, whether it's for implementing them in their local communities, a lot about rail banking. Really, how do they start the conversation with the Rails to Trails group?
I think the conversation starts, one, you can join us at a coalition meeting, any of the quarters, or you can reach out to me at glawson@railstotrails.org, so we can start providing some technical expertise around visioning trails.
Thanks, Greg.
This question about why aren't protected bike lanes included? They could be part of a network and are more appropriate in already built up places. Let me tell you, Robert, this was a debate and a conversation that we had at a number of our technical advisory committees about defining what a transportation trail is and isn't. And protected bike lanes are a very important part of the network, yes, but they just differ from a transportation trail or a shared use path. One part of our Complete Streets implementation plan is to make sure we are selecting the right facility and updating all of our guidance documents to do so. We are currently looking to adopt large parts of the AASHTO 5th edition bicycle guide, and it gives really good guidance based on volumes of when you would want a transportation trail that puts people together in a shared place versus having separated protected bike lane and an adjacent sidewalk. So if it's really serving a transportation need in a dense place, that separated bike lane probably needs to have a sidewalk next to it. So it's kind of a yes and. And as part of the development of this plan, we are recommending that transportation trails be integrated into our bicycle and pedestrian planning effort the next time that we revise our bicycle and pedestrian master plan, because these things have to work in concert, but selecting the right facility is really important.
Thanks, Meg. And then we had a great question that I think kind of leads into our next phase, but there are new surveys and studies around with improved bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. What makes this plan and effort different, I'm paraphrasing, that will actually lead to shovels in the ground and new miles of trails?
So I hear the survey and study fatigue. It's real. The survey that we deployed for this plan was really specific to developing that vision and the goals and what was important to Marylanders. So it was really focused on how to develop this strategy for advancing new trails. I think replying to a local survey for the development of a local bike ped plan is something that will probably have the most influence on seeing something in the ground in your community. As part of the planning process, that is what we advise local jurisdictions to do to get it into an adopted plan and therefore be eligible for a lot of our funding. So the statewide, yes, develops a vision, but for shovels in the ground and seeing something in your neighborhood, we really encourage you. Those like local surveys are actually very important for adopting a local plan.
And we encourage you to look at those toolkits. The building support toolkit has a lot of great resources for, building up that engagement and buy-in from your leadership, whether that's your mayor, if you're a small town, maybe it has to be all the way up to your county executive. But click through those toolkits because there's links to resources, there's case studies, a lot of your answers, a lot of your questions can be answered through those.
Handling modal conflict on trails. I saw that pop up a few times, and I did send a direct answer to one person, but can touch upon that again. So once a trail is existing and it's on the ground and we're in that maintenance and operations phase, that is when, yes, there needs to be that modal conflict focus. And I think there's a number of things for making sure a trail is up to standard, things like design the, dotted line or separation so you can see two sides of a path, the signage reminding people who they need to yield to on a different trail are really important once the trail is in the ground, and planning for that from the beginning is important. And then I'll also share, as I did in the direct answer I sent, this plan did not focus on those behavioral safety issues, but we have a whole arm of MDOT that does in our Maryland Highway Safety Office. And thinking about scooters and e-bikes in particular, they already have communications materials for a lot of modes. And over the next year, we have a focused project to develop a suite of materials specifically for e-micromobility that local jurisdictions can use, pass out readily on their trails, or through their programs such as like Capital Bike Share or the dockless scooters in Baltimore. So we've worked with Baltimore City and Capital Bike Share along the way to make sure that the materials will be usable to address the kind of behavioral safety issues.
Thanks, Meg. And we're at 1 o'clock. Meg, do you want to do any final words?
We apologize for the technical difficulties. We do have all of the questions that were asked recorded, and we'll make an effort to respond or post some frequently asked questions on the website. On your screen is a QR code, so you can tell us what you thought of the webinar or request more resources on the website. Again, it's a living document. Please subscribe and join us for future MDOT in Motion webinars. In October, we turn to Walktober, which will have weekly webinars focused on walking for health, accessibility, safety, and more. In December, we will have our year in review updates, tracking our progress on our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. You can contact us at completestreets@mdot.maryland.gov. And once again, we thank you all for joining us and rejoining us today. Please explore all of the resources on our interactive website and stay in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.